with Ort Connor.
Good morning again. For those of you who may be experiencing some streaming issues with us, we're still working on that as well. And to remind you, in the studio, the Premier of the Cayman Islands, the Honorable Andre Ebanks, and Minister of Finance, also Minister of Education and Training, the Honorable Rolston, Anglin.
It's been a very, very busy time. And of course, we've also gotten our historic coalition agreement signed.
I shared that with our audience on Friday.
Another huge milestone. And I think sometimes as Caymanians, because we haven't seen a lot of these things in action, we don't celebrate or recognize the historic nature of it. And I mean this just as I'm going to say it. I have no doubt that that document is going to wind up in the archives and is going to be a significantly historic document for us as a country. It is a real watershed moment in my mind politically. I campaigned heavily on it and promised the people of West Bay North that I was not going to join a government that would not be bound by a coalition agreement. And I'm so happy to say that under the leadership of the Premier, we've gotten this over the finish line. It took longer than any of us would have naturally wanted it to. You know, you'd like to get these things done within a month. But it took a while, but for good reason.
Yes.
We have a comprehensive working document that we can be held accountable to.
And to give credit where credit is due, it's the gentleman to my left, Rolston Malachi Anglin. We got in the small hours of the dawn after election. He was the first member to say, I understand this is going to be the 11 of us. But what I'd like to see happen is that we have a coalition agreement that set out how we are going to operate and cooperate. Part of the good reason to introduce it now is that, number one, now after this time of going on 5 months, we've learned each other, right? Because some of us may have known each other, but haven't worked with each other. What my grandmother used to say, come see me, come live with me. Two different things. Two different things.
Hugely different.
So one, we've built up our camaraderie. We know each other's touch points. I know he needs his coffee in the morning.
Otherwise, I'm mucked up.
So I'm not going to touch him with what I need yet. Let him get coffee in him. So those kind of little things. Then two, we've now undergone the budget exercise which will lead us back to why we're here today, the SPS, agreed on the projects and the programs, the macro numbers, the getting into the detail. And we say, you know what? The public also wants this agreement of the coalition agreement to say what you all going to be working together. Why would we produce two different documents and have a coalition agreement out there that says a completely different set of projects and then an SPS that says a completely different project? We've done the work. Let's make this an appendix to the coalition agreement so the country can see, hold on, we thought it was this. You all have run off now to put a space station on the BRAC. I don't see that in here. That is why we said, you know what? We'll just tie it together, make them link. And I believe, as fate would have it, since we did it in Constitution Hall, the signing of the document on the 16th of October, that Constitution Hall has seen so many historic decisions, going back to the minister's point about history, where we know vestrymen made completely difficult decisions that shaped the future of this country, where it's seen decisions like women's suffrage get passed. Let's bring it back to our roots. Let's do something historic. I agree with the minister in terms of it being a watershed moment that's going to tie us and bind us and how we're going to cooperate, move the country forward.
So everything is in one neat package now. What you see as far as the agreement that has been signed amongst the coalition, the strategic policy statement, and then of course the budget comes and that will follow in line with that as well. And I know you want to focus on the strategic policy statement, but can we talk a little bit more about the agreement itself? Now, we've heard of agreements in the past, but no one, to my knowledge, have we seen any seen it publicized, or the details of it, publicized as well, which adds so much transparency to what you have done, as well. Can you speak to some of the details in that agreement?
Sure. So if you take a step back and go back to election night where the concept was introduced by now Minister Anglin, we then had to give the public some insight of how it developed. We then asked the Cabinet Office to do some research, look around the Commonwealth and see where this has been done before, to see if you could find an appropriate template where there was a coalition agreement. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We definitely want to ensure that we customize it to us, the 11 of us who are working together, and customize it within the Cayman context. But let's not try to do this from scratch. Then we engaged a local attorney, gave the templates that the Cabinet Office found, did some research. Particularly, we had a retreat in May where we already begun early to think about what are the projects that we'd like to see feature, gave those notes to the local attorney, produced a document that one sets out how we came together in the first place in the opening paragraph, sets out how we are going to cooperate with each other, what happens if there's a thorny issue between the group, how is it resolved, what kind of mediation would take place, what else do we want to agree that we need. We're agreeing to continue the ministerial code of conduct. So that right there, if that's a reference point, you then also have another set of guiding principles that are going to lead our conduct as ministers. But that only covers ministers. We also need to work, and we set it to the Speaker, to introduce an enforceable parliamentary code of conduct, which will be another reference document of how we're going to conduct ourselves as parliamentarians. And then, as I said, the appendix at the back in terms of the broad and specific outcomes dovetails with the SPS to show the country what we'll be working on.
Now, the old adage, my word is my bond. How is that exemplified in this document as well?
I think it's exemplified just by the fact that you saw all 11 members come to sign. So this didn't happen sort of like quietly and shepherded through the night. Constitution Hall, 16th of October. Every member of the coalition there coming, having read the document, been through the document, changes were made based on coalition member feedback, and evidencing that their word is going to be their bond by signing on the dot, recorded in front of cameras.
That's right. And also you can appreciate that a lot of this, if you compare it to a part of the Constitution, and they're all public documents, it has a lot of those tentacles, right? The Premier spoke of mediation. Those are the same things that are contained in a part of the Constitution. What I can say to the public is organization of politics and us as politicians is critically important. I'm never, ever going to veer from that. Equally, the public has the right to choose its government. And so the country chose 4 TCCP, 4 CINP, I think it was about 6 progressives, and the rest independents, right? And so the country chose its members to parliament. But you need to have at least 10, more like 11 or 12 to have a comfortable government when it comes to finance committee and things like that, right? And so we now, as the persons elected, have to deal with what the public says is their will. OC, in no time in history do I believe that we can't shake hands and say my word is my bond, and as men and women say that we're going to honor agreements. What I'm also going to say is I've learned through the school of hard knocks that my word is my bond, my recollection of my word versus someone else's recollection of their word can sometimes be different. And so what, as the Premier said, what we've done as modern democracies do is we've crystallized all those words that are our bonds collectively, put them in a document and signed for all and sundry to see. Because I think that's critically important that we not only hold ourselves to that level of account, but that the public does.
Yeah.
The public has the right to know. The public has the right to see their elected members organize themselves in this fashion. And so at any point in the future now, should there be another government that is not a single party government, we through this watershed movement has at least provided a
blueprint.
template.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We provided a blueprint, and now we've raised the bar of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the future, should there be another coalition government, they ought not to, at least the public ought not to let them get away with just saying, you know what, we've all sat in some room, agreed what we're going to do, but you, the public, have no right to hear and see it. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a new bar.
Precisely.
And for those persons who may be curious in terms of that document, other than the individual members, 11 members having possession of it, is there a central repository for that document?
Yes.
Where is it housed?
I'll get you the link because it's public. Mm-hmm. I'll get you the link.
No, but I'm talking about while it is public, are you housing it somewhere so that original document
that's what
that's what you mean. Okay,
yes.
I thought, no, see, usually you know things about public. Yes, I have it.
Okay,
I have it.
Okay.
So see, that's why I began by saying that I'm convinced that this is going to wind up in the archives one day.
Yeah.
I'm convinced this will wind up in the archive, and certainly we presented it to the Parliament already.
Yes.
As well. So, listen, it is where it is, and that is critically important. But the SPS is also very important.
Yep, and we're going to talk about that as soon as we return from this commercial break, folks. Please stay tuned. The conversation with the Honorable Premier of the Cayman Islands, Honorable Andre Ebanks, and the Minister of Finance, Minister of Education and Training, Honorable Rolston Anglin, will continue. Don't change that dial. Please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly.
With Ort Connor.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. Again, for those of you who may be experiencing some streaming issues with us, we're still working on that as well. And to remind you, in the studio, the Premier of the Cayman Islands, the Honorable Andre Ebanks, and Minister of Finance, also Minister of Education and Training, the Honorable Rolston Anglin. Premier, over to you.
Good morning again. Before we turn to an overview of the SPS, the strategic policy statement, and the broad specific outcomes, and going into the budget, I wanted to just reassure the country that government is aware of the weather system. Mm-hmm. Right now, hazard management and like agencies are monitoring it very carefully. It's difficult to pinpoint its exact trajectory at this stage. So at the moment, keep calm, carry on, make sure that you just take a very reasonable stock take of what you need, your supplies that you need. There's certainly at this stage no need to panic shop. Just take a look around and make sure that you generally, you are prepared. And as and when more and more updates become available, we'll continue to keep the public up to date.
Certainly. So that means people should be alert, keep themselves informed in terms of what's happening. And as usual, please rely on the local resources as opposed to others.
Correct. Yeah. And it's a good reminder that we're not out of hurricane season yet.
Absolutely.
Certainly. Okay, gentlemen, SPS.
So I thought what we could do, just for starters, is I mentioned to Minister Anglin when we spoke very early this morning, given a brief overview of exactly what it is and how we got here. And then we can have the conversation organically flow from there.
So, OC, thanks very much. I mean, one of the things that is critically important in all of our public appearances is continuing to remind our public, because we practice this every day. Like a lawyer, an accountant, a doctor, if you do it every day, you learn it, but the person who's not involved every day isn't naturally going to remember. So the SPS, or Strategic Policy Statement, is just that. It is where the government selects broad outcomes, underpins it with specific outcomes, then says, how are we going to fund these activities in a broad sense? And so what the Strategic Policy Statement is it is a clear statement of those broad outcomes and then we produce a pro forma set of financials that would underpin how we would fund those outcomes.
Could you give us an example of one of those?
Give me 1 second,
Sure.
and then we allocate those numbers to specific ministries and says, here's what every ministry actually will receive to achieve its involvement in these broad outcomes. And so we'll see quite simply, we let's just take one at random. Public services. Facilitate streamlined, integrated, and high-performing. No, that's a specific outcome. The outcome is effective, efficient, accountable, and people-centered public services. And we're going to do things like facilitate streamlined, integrated, and high-performing public services. And then we have key projects and initiatives that underpin how we actually deliver that.
Yes.
Now, there'll be various agencies that are involved with the differing deliveries of the broad outcomes. And that is where every ministry has developed internally its own set of projects to underpin the SPS. You cost them out, send them to the finance ministry. The finance ministry will have a to and fro to try and ensure that those numbers are solid. And then we roll it all up and have a consolidated set of financials. Now we'll see. Let me also say that once we have done all of that and we take it to Parliament, this is a very broad document we take to Parliament and we debate. This debate then ends in a vote of which the Parliament approved unanimously because there were all ayes and no no's were recorded. And so this now gives us the authority to now create the detailed budget, which will come in November the 5th.
Correct.
Now, a lot of noise was made around us changing the SPS coming 90 days after a general election to 6 months. The reason for that was quite simple. Think about coming out of an election, OC. If you are a newly elected member, not only a newly elected member, a new minister, picture trying to get into your ministry, get caught up on what's happening, try to then say, how are we going to deliver on our campaign promises? And all on top of that, try to come to grips with what your budget looks like and input into an SPS 90 days afterwards, which would have brought us on July 31st, which would have been 5 months out from the end of the year. We said, look, should we continue to rush this as they have done in the past and rush it at the expense of accuracy?
Correct.
Because the SPSs of past have the actual budget has been wildly different than the SPS. Every single time. And I went through this. I won't do that here today. But if you listen to my finance committee interjection in June, I went year for year from, I think it was 2012 straight up to 2025 and showed the wild differences. We said enough is enough with this sort of approach to governance. We said, let us take our time, and we therefore went to the Parliament and gave ourselves 6 months, which would have been October 31st. So we actually delivered it 16 days earlier than statutorily required. Let us give ourselves 6 months to actually come with a credible document with what we know now and feel very confident is a credible fiscal frame. And now we will simply come 3 weeks later and there'll be some minor adjustments, in particular around revenues, as we solidify some of those numbers to come then with the actual budget and debate the budget for the next 3-year budget, that 3-year SPS that has a 2-year budget underpinning it. And so we'll see, that is what the SPS is. It is us. This is our statement to Parliament and therefore the country. Here are the priorities. Broadly speaking, here's how we're going to fund them. And so you can look on from page 47 onward, and that shows all of the forecasted financial statements, culminating on page 51 that shows the allocations to all the various ministries. But the meat of the document that I think should be of even greater importance to the public, quite frankly, is what is it that we're promising?
Exactly.
Because this is what you're going to hold us accountable for.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And to perhaps underscore this point, what we then achieve then for the public is greater accuracy, less stress on the system. Because remember now, in years gone by, when you're rushing to do the SPS in 3 months, all ministries, portfolios, Ministry of Finance team, the ministers are rushing to produce that document. And as the minister says, you're getting your bearings. So numbers are being thrown up. Now you got to run around and do that again for the budget. So less stress on the system because you're preparing in unison for one set of period of documents, the SPS, and then the details that's going to come. In addition to that, we also provided the opportunity for the opposition of laying this. Minister Anglin laid this on Wednesday of last week. That gave them, we didn't file and want to debate the motion on it until Friday. So that gave them 2 days to go through 59 pages and then be able to prepare themselves. And I thank the leader of the opposition for recognizing that fact on the floor of Parliament. So, yes, we knew that there may be some feedback or you're moving from 3 to 6 months, but we had to look at it and say, let's be braver about this. You tell us, Ministry of Finance, what makes sense. Let us worry about the politics of it. You just tell us what would make better sense and a more accurate set of preparations for the country to more rely on.
Yep. Okay. And let's pick up on reliance. The opposition's tact was one that actually had to make me chuckle because they came with tax, borrow, and spend. And actually, that's what the UDP said very clearly about the progressives way back when I was in my previous Rolston Anglin 1.0 in politics. That could be no further from the truth. Do we have a tax package? Yes. More than 80% is coming directly from financial services. No impact on the common man on the street. Another chunk is coming from a restructuring of how land transfers are taxed, and it is going to be attaching to high-end properties. For a long time, Caymanians have said, why is it that wealthy people can come and invest in Cayman, pay the same 7.5% that we do when we want to buy our house, our townhouse, for let's say $550,000 to $750,000? Why is that fair? And so we listened. We listened to the cries of Caymanians and we said, you know what? You're right. If you are going to be spending $2 million and above on properties, perhaps you should be paying a differential type of arrangement as it relates to land transfers in this country. I don't believe that impacts any average man on the street at all. When we looked at the licensing regime, the Premier Court went to all of his agencies, and people have talked about the SEC zone and the tech zone, and said maybe the deal that was framed years ago fit the purpose then. Maybe we need to have a relook. And so this is not taxing the common man or putting any strain on the private sector, that is going to cause business to shrink and flee from Cayman. Because we've budgeted truthfully, let us take the infamous NGS 55. Well, see, NGS 55 has averaged around $53 million for the last 6 or 7 years. Do you know what was in the 2025 budget for it? $18 million.
Wow.
That's why we just had to do 2 sets of supplementaries in Parliament since taking office.
June and September this year.
Oh, so that's $35 million off from,
Right. But that was purposely done because everybody knows that NGS 55 is never going to be $18 million. We could only dream of NGS 55 getting back down to $18 million. We have budgeted it for $43 million. So as Minister of Finance, I could have came to the Premier and said, hey, Premier, let's just put $25 million toward it. That would have been $18 million more artificial surplus to add to this number to make it look good. I said, no, we are going to budget this appropriately. Now, after budgeting it appropriately, the opposition then said, well, why don't you budget it 100%? And now they start picking it apart and saying, let's do the difference between last year's actual and your budget and minus it from your projected surplus. And guess what? That's a deficit. We have not been able to and had yet rolled out our entire program. As you know, that comes at the budget stage.
Correct.
One of the initiatives that caucus has already approved is I'm going to be appointing, and you remember this in the Constitution, those Section 54 committees and commissions that we can appoint.
Yes.
We're going to put together a bipartisan committee out of the Ministry of Finance that is going to look holistically at health insurance nationally. Why am I ministry? Cynical falls to the ministry.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so in that, we are convinced that given what we see as to how health insurance needs to be framed in this country, there's going to be greater opportunities to get more Caymanians on health coverage versus having to be funded through NGS 55. Hence the reason we budgeted it at 84%, right? And so every one of these, we've put a lot of thought into what the number is, but there's a range of them. And listen to this one, OC, and I'm going to send you this back as a note, just so you have it, because I think the opposition is probably going to come on the show. So I think you better be armed with the facts. I am going to give you a reconciliation of what they budgeted for 4 outputs like that, how they under budgeted them. And if we had budgeted them at their levels, I would have went to Parliament with a some $67 million surplus. So I could have budgeted the same numbers they did, went out to the public and said, there, 65 million, 68 million, $70 million surplus. Yes, thump your chest and feel good, knowing that you're going to come back for supplementaries anyway. We did not play games with this budget. We've been very conservative, and we've done the right thing as it relates to what we go to Parliament with. We went to Parliament with truth, hand on heart, but they still criticized us.
Okay, we have to take a commercial break, but when we return, I know you want to get more into detail, but again, you talk about some ground-breaking things that took place, including the agreement. The approach now that you have taken to the strategic policy statement and the budgeting, hopefully that will be a template that others will be able to follow as well, depending on the success at the end of 4 years. Also, we can talk a little bit about that, folks.
Yes.
Don't change that dial. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly.
For the Record with Ort Connor.
Good morning. Welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, we have the Minister of Finance and the Minister for Education and Training, Honorable Rolston Anglin, and the Premier of the Cayman Islands, Honorable Andre Ebanks. Gentlemen.
So to pick up where the minister left off before the break, in terms of the approach, to reinforce that point. So we talked about the SPS, us amending the Public Management Finance Act. So after a general election, it could be prepared in 6 months. The point he's making about these heavy budget items in terms of NGS 55, healthcare costs for the vulnerable, TP 41, which is financial assistance for the vulnerable, HEA 2, is to fund them up to 84%. And he pointed out, quite rightly, that the criticism came, why didn't you do 100%? We know that we say, if you surrender and say we'll just go up to 100%, then we now are not having our thinking caps on of how we're going to produce some cost containment and potential reduction to it. At the same time, you don't want each of those ministers, which has happened for successive administrations, to have to go cap in hand to Parliament April, May, June of the next year, to then face criticism that there wasn't enough in the budget simply for an exercise that's cosmetic. So as the minister said, he came to me, this was maybe about August, and said, look, let's just talk how we talk behind closed doors. Premier, because we got 2 options. You could either accept a $67 million surplus by reducing these big ticket items. Hooray, success, surplus, we can go in September. But the criticism then would have come the other way. You all know these aren't real items, and each of those ministers is going to have to come back begging. Again, as we did with the SPS, forget about what other blowback might come. Let's do what actually makes sense. To plan accurately, invest, and then deliver outcomes. So you say, you know what? Yes, we may take some feedback, some kickback for a slimmer or a slim surplus, but we would have realistic numbers, and the country can finally see that the neat trick of moving things around has stopped. So again, to the top of the hour, you talked about the template of the coalition agreement. Let's now see if another government then comes along to go back to the shell game. I don't think that that's going to happen now that the country has seen this and now knows where to ask the appropriate questions. And even more so, our longer term plan about moving to outcome-based budgeting should really change the game.
Absolutely. And I'm going to get the actual specifics. NGS 55 is at 84%. There's a couple of them that are more difficult to bring down, because we had to look at each of them and say, what actions can we take that we believe are credible actions that will assist Caymanians? Because that's the key, right? The actions we take have to be ones that's going to assist Caymanians, not put a bigger burden on them.
And can't be pie in the sky stuff.
That's right. What are we going to do? And so some of them are still funded at 94%. Some of them are funded right there at 96%, because we know it's very difficult to bring any of them down. Right, I think one of them is purely because we think there's going to be there's going to start to now be some attrition around things like semen, etc.
Correct.
But the other ones are at 90-something% because we believe the work in the Ministry of Employment, Caymanian Employment and Immigration is going to get more Caymanians off unemployment into credible real jobs and not on permanent financial assistance. If we're going to be committed to that work, then we have to put our money where our mouth is. And we have said clearly to the country, we are going to drive this process. We're serious about getting Caymanians back to work. Because a lot of people out there will say two things. We have people who are Caymanians who don't want a job and you're simply funding them. We get that all the time.
All the time.
Okay? But what they don't see is that there are hundreds of Caymanians who genuinely do not want DFA assistance.
Yes.
They want a job. A lot of them come as the last resort. It's when they've exhausted their savings. But they've been out of a job for 6, 8, 12 months, sending out resumes, going to interviews, promises being made, and not landing a job. And so we've sent a very clear signal to the private sector. The game of playing around with work permits at the cost of Caymanians ends. We're going to be serious about this thing. Now, is that a harsh message for some to have received? Yes, because successive governments have paid lip service to it. But we are serious. They see the legislative changes that are being proposed. And so we're convinced that we are going to be able to get Caymanians into real, meaningful employment so that them and their families can get their pride back, their level of being a human being. Because that's what this is about for a lot of families. A lot of people, while others may criticize this, listen, if you are in that position, what are you going to do? Get kicked out of your house, not be able to fund your children and be able to take care of them, even with that small insistence the government gives. And so, because it is small when it comes to it. So, because we're talking about $1,500 a month. But at least it's better than nothing to get people back on their feet.
And you can, sorry to cut you off, but you can also see from the minister and the Ministry of Caymanian Employment, Minister Miles, some of the programs that he's put in place with, say, in conjunction, as an example, with the DP for tourism. They've made it clear, as I've gone and witnessed these forums myself, they've made it clear it's not only getting into a job, it's giving the Caymanian the pathway to the executive office.
Yes.
Because that is where you can absorb shocks in the economy if you got a higher salary. Forget it once you're on assistance, because government can only do what it has to do and has to be able to provide to many people. Not only do you get the job, but if now you can see the pathway to the top, that's when you can absorb a bit more.
Certainly. Minister Anglin, you mentioned cynical, and I came upon a situation last week, and it concerned me and some of the people that I spoke to, including the person who's going through this scenario, where it appears as if there may be a double standard in cynical as far as access to healthcare. And we know healthcare is a challenge, internationally. Every country is, globally, everyone is challenged, with it. But while a recommendation was made for that person to go to renowned eye clinic in the U.S., Cineco instead was making plans, making arrangements for that person to go to Jamaica. And the reason that I heard for that was because the person was on government assistance. I forget what they refer to it as, but because that person was on government assistance, they were channeling them towards Jamaica, where the costs there may have been significantly less than in the U.S. And the question is, within Cineco, do we have a double standard as far as Caymanians, are concerned in terms of, where they stand?
Well, that's a good point, and I certainly will ask the leadership at Cineco that very question, because you're right. It shouldn't be that if you now qualify for NGS 55 but access no other services, you're sent to one place. But if you're getting permanent financial assistance, let's just say you're sent to another place, it should be where is the best quality of care that could give you the best outcome.
Yeah.
That's what should drive the decision about where to send you, not whether you get other government assistance.
Yeah, I
think
think
ask that question.
The term was made because he was within the indigent group. That's what happened. Folks, we're going to take our last commercial break. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly.
With Ort Connor.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. Time goes quickly when you're getting relevant information about the state of affairs here in the Cayman Islands. And we're certainly being briefed this morning by the Honorable Rolston Anglin, Minister for Education and Training, as well as Minister of Finance, and the Honorable Andre Ebanks, Premier of the Cayman Islands. Gentlemen, the mic is yours.
So I want to return. You raise a very good question on Cineco that the minister is going to undertake to look into. I want to return just briefly back to employment. So we talked about protection for Caymanians. We know that there were abuses, getting Caymanians in jobs, but also getting them pathways, not just jobs, but pathways. But the topic of immigration all too well. There's no fooling you. There's no fooling the public. We will need overseas labor. We will need overseas talent.
No question.
So what the minister has outlined when he had about 6 focus groups made up of about 70 people from different industries, tourism, financial services, HR, I think small business. What they want is, they said, well, we are going to need talent. We're going to need overseas labor. What they want is, we understand, we know where the administration is headed. We know the NCFC wants to have Caymanians protected and have those pathways, wants to build a better pipeline. So there's information sharing provision in that bill is critical in terms of building the pipeline from education. We have scholarships. It still baffles us. It baffles him. You go back decades that these two are not talking. Yep. So one is pumping out, and the students are doing what we're saying, getting this students in masters in AI. Masters in artificial intelligence. The Department of Work knows what the labor market needs, is pushing out work permits, and the two aren't talking. That tells you what the market needs. But at the end of the day, there are only so many of us. So the business will need the permits. The feedback, and I sat in on some of the focus groups, that said, that's fine, provided that the system, once we've gotten the Caymanians in place, the system works that when you need the permit, it's done in a much more efficient fashion. That we can live with, because that will then bring the harmony that you need.
Yeah, and getting those focus groups together is important. For instance, I found I knew that there was a shortage, but only recently I found out that as far as qualified accountants go in the Cayman Islands, Caymanians, we're averaging 3 per year. Now, there's no way that we can fill the gap, with that kind of production, 3 per year.
And that's the thing, right? One of the things that we're victims of our own success, and I put victims in quote, right? Because honestly, I would much rather be here fighting for Caymanian employment and integration into the economy than the opposite, trying to get an economy and find jobs and create jobs in the first instance.
Precisely.
So we've got the first bit of it right. We have a sound, stable, growing economy.
Yes.
OC, to that point, and you're stealing some of my thunder from the from the budget. But since you mentioned it, I can't help but mention the fact that one of the things that we are also going to undertake in the Ministry now of Education is we're going to roll out another committee, and that one is going to draw from the private sector, members of Education Council, a couple of reps from UCCI, and private and public schools. So I'm going to put together a real strategic group that is going to then recommend back to me as minister what should be our priority areas of study. And that can't be 50 priorities. Let me be clear to the public. Let's be clear. We have a small, narrow economy. We have to really hone in. I can tell you off the top that the teaching is going to be up top, is going to be there. Healthcare and doctors are going to be in there because we just got to look at our economy. You just mentioned one accountant. I was in shock to hear that there are still people out there who are saying to young Cayman children, "Oh no, you don't need to be an accountant. We have too many of them." There is a 700 plus shortage right now, as we're speaking here in the studio, of need to have Caymanian accountants. So we can't get too many. But what we're going to do is, long term though, we're going to tie that to funding.
Right.
If we're going to be serious about this, OC, and one of the features that people will see about the NCFC, we're not kicking any cans down the road.
Yes.
We're going to come truthfully and openly to the public, and we're going to take the tough decisions. We cannot say, let's just say we went up at 5, 7. We can't have 5, 7 priority areas of study, but fund them exactly the same as non-priority areas. There is going to have to be differential provision.
Correct.
Because if you have priority areas, you then have to tell people through dollars, this is the areas we need you to consider and to go in, because this is what our economy needs.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that if a young Caymanian who's brilliant in the sciences says, I want to be an astrophysicist, where they're more than likely only going to ever work for NASA. That we're going to kill that dream.
No.
But what we have to be real that person is more than likely never going to return to Cayman.
And we'll be very proud of them.
We're very proud of them. And I know some of the left in public may say, well, don't ever fund it. I don't think we can ever do that.
Can't do that.
We have to fulfill and really allow our young people to chase their dreams.
Yes.
But at the same time, we have to give them those guardrails.
Right.
So that our young people can say, aha, those are the areas we really need in the economy. That's what is going to be easier for me to attain a job and a great life in these Cayman Islands, and maximize our potential and government fund.
Correct.
Toward it.
And let's reiterate this point to put it in its context now. Until we get to those numbers or closer to those numbers for accountants, then the big four are going to say, but we need people to do the work now.
That's right.
There are over 30,000 investment funds registered. Somebody's got to do that work. The days have gone where there used to be the threat, all they'll leave. Oh, no, they're never going to leave. But now with technology, you don't actually pick up sticks and leave now. The work can just literally technologically be done someplace else.
That's right.
So we have to ensure that we're doing two things at the same time, making sure that the services can be provided here to hone in on the industry that's providing a large portion of the budget, while at the same time planning for the future, dispelling some of these myths that there are plenty of Caymanian accountants. Why would you do that? As you said, at the Education Long Services Award on Saturday, and I must tell you, Minister, that was a fantastic night.
It was.
It was a fantastic night. And the point of, and he's mentioned this before, the teacher might not know who is in front of them. That might be the next partner of Deloitte, KPMG, EY, Maples. You have to encourage them, and we have to get greater education as to the vastness of what's here on the island in the economy, and their dreams can be fulfilled.
What kind of buy-in are we getting from the companies out there, the Caymanian companies, or those that are active in the Cayman Islands, in terms of the approach that you want to take in ensuring that more and more Caymanians are hired and the focus on in various areas?
We're seeing good signs of it. So we attended, I think, RBC. You and I attended our RBC where they had about 15, 18 maybe. Don't quote me, but at least nearly 24, where they've picked up to give them training so that they can go on, have produced, enhance and bolster their opportunities for jobs. Cayman Finance did another initiative where they actually got jobs. So people have secured employment. I think that was almost 24. And then again, hearkening back to the focus groups that Minister Miles ran before we produced the bill, have all said, if we can make this arrangement of understanding that this administration is quite serious about protecting Caymanians, reducing and minimizing and eliminating abuse in the system, but at the same time having recognized that we are running a battleship here of an economy, and we will need foreign talent, and we can get that in an efficient manner while Caymanians get career pathways. That is what we're leading, and the reactions that I've seen so far have been overwhelmingly positive.
Okay. So what do we say then to this person who has said what we need as well is to slow down the PR and status grants as if we continue, or they say if we continue, then those accounting jobs will never be available, for Caymanians?
Good question. So that looks at the matter at the other end of the spectrum. So we've been talking about entry and pathways, middle, and to the executive. The other end that we are working on is to alter the methodology of how you accumulate points to gain PR and then ultimately status. Because that's our prized possession to become a citizen of the country. The current methodology, and not throwing any other past administration out of the bus, just by the passage of time, just by complex problems that have emerged, is out of date. We have to admit it.
Well, the gentleman sitting next to you in the early 2000s was involved in it.
These are thorny problems.
Yes.
And we now have to admit we have moved on. The population is now 90,000 approximately. We need better population management.
Yes.
And you want to be able to look over and be like, I know why that person does status.
Yeah. And just to underpin it, we are going to be reintroducing a hard rollover policy.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. So to address that person's point, the hard rollover policy is coming back. That is what is going to be the real filter so that just everyone doesn't say, as the Premier just said, you show up, you get to year 9, everyone gets to apply. I mean, we cannot continue down that pathway. Otherwise, it continues to be unsustainable. And as the author of that message just said, quite rightly, then we would just be giving away, quote unquote, those opportunities in any event. And so that is why we're going down that route. It's a double-end approach. We're trying to secure things at the entry, secure things at the end, ensure that we now have a framework that actually works for persons coming in. You remember this, OC, when we went to first IRT, we wanted a clear, progressive system of rights and responsibilities. That way, persons who come, before you even come to Cayman, you know, okay, you got, I think we're saying 7 years. I can't remember the exact number, but there is a hard rollover policy in there. This isn't in my minutes. I don't remember.
And we'll encourage people to look at the bill that's out there.
Yeah, the Green Bill is out. Yes.
And I should say this, and I'm happy to say it publicly, because the minister's right. The opposition will have their time. We do need to make sure that they have consultation on the bill. Yes. So Minister Miles had to travel for family reasons this week.
Okay.
PS Wayne Panton is acting on his behalf. I said it privately to the opposition when cameras went off on Friday, to a few of the opposition members, but I'm happy to say it now. The immigration bill is not some obscure set of provisions in the Companies Act that Minister Anglin and I and Financial Services know about and deal with. The immigration affects the entire Cayman Islands community. And that now is legislation that we do need to sit as 19 members, grant an opportunity for them to get the overview, the same overview the focus groups have gotten, and look, because Minister Anglin also said, look, they might come up with a modification that we're thinking, okay,
Yeah.
That's going to be appropriate committee stage amendment.
Yeah.
Rather than them having to pick the bill apart, come and then try to argue it. Let's see if we can have some consultation with them, give them the same presentation, and build it together.
Bipartisan approach. So I want to give each of you an opportunity for some closing comments. And Minister Anglin, may want to talk about your Ohio State Buckeyes, how they're doing as well.
Oh, see. How tempting. You know to watch. It's always game time at this time of year.
Yes.
People who know me know my love of my alma mater. we won this weekend again.
Yes.
But what we're doing is creating wins for Caymanians. We're banking up wins for Caymanians. I think that this SPS and the approach we've taken is a huge win for us. Huge win for the Cayman Islands. Huge win for our people. This is the right approach. We're fiscally conservative, but at the same time, we're not proposing to cut any of the critical services that we know our people need. What we're looking at is reshaping how some of those services are delivered so that we can save monies in government, give people back that level of pride that they should enjoy. More people under health care coverage is better than people have to go through that intrusive DFA process where they have to expose everything about themselves just to get health coverage because they've now been kicked off the system because they've reached retirement and no longer can afford it.
Yes.
We are looking holistically at global health care, but more importantly, the NCFC has delivered a coalition agreement underpinned by our priorities. These priorities are going to be good for Cayman, good for Caymanians. We have a truly balanced budget, and we truly have a framework that is going to, I believe, for the next 2 years, deliver services, but also keep us accountable.
Yes.
Okay, Premier.
Thank you, OC. Pleasure once again. And you can count on us. We'll be back again and again.
Okay.
Always a pleasure to engage with you and for the record as a program. The SPS sets out the broad vision, sets out where we're going, aggregate financial targets, 59-page document so the country can get some insight of the vision. But stay tuned. We're set to go back to Parliament 2 p.m. Wednesday, the 5th of November, to deliver the budget. That's where details will come. If you took a look around and your MP that's a minister didn't speak, feel no way, because this was meant to be an exercise of the macro. And more so the point I was making, particularly in my winding up, was how we will work together. The coalition has worked, the NCFC is working together through its governance document, and how we work with the opposition. That's how you're going to get things done.
Yep.
The detail of the programs and initiatives comes, and that's when you can expect every member to speak, because all 11 are working. Ministers are working. PSs are working. And what we plan to do for our community. So stay tuned for that, because we have long-standing problems. We've touched on a number of them here. Our overall strategy, we have to resolve long-standing problems, do that as a way that unifies the country, and innovate our thinking, because it's time to move on.
Yeah.
We're going to plan accurately. We're going to invest and deliver, and it's not tax and spend. So God bless you. OC, God bless the listening public, and may God continue to bless these Cayman Islands.
Thank you very much. And one of our listeners has written and said, good morning, OC, blessings to our government. I think we got a good government. Keep up the great work. So I want to thank all of those who are listening this morning. We want to apologize for any technical difficulties that we may have had, as far as streaming is concerned. I encourage you to join Mr. Charles Glidden Charlo at 12:15 for Talk Today. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to continue to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.
Amen.